Hello there and welcome to Sleepy Time Tales. Tonight we travel far from your quiet room, across deserts and open seas, past marble temples and mountaintops, to visit the great wonders of the world. These are the places that once seemed to defy gravity, time, and even belief itself. Some were raised by emperors reaching for glory. Some were shaped by devotion, or carved patiently into stone, or lifted toward the sky by sheer imagination. A few of them still stand. Most have crumbled into dust and story, and yet their names still tower over history, telling us what ancient people treasured, what they feared to lose, and what they hoped might last forever. This is a slow journey through ambition and artistry, through triumph and gentle collapse. It is the story of how human beings have always tried to build something larger than a single life. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, let your shoulders soften and your breathing slow. Let your thoughts drift out across the centuries and allow your mind to wander among monuments and memory. Let's begin. The first 7 wonders began as a traveler's list for curious ancient Greeks. Imagine stepping off a ship into a busy harbor and hearing sailors trade tips the way modern backpackers do, naming the sights worth a long detour. Greek writers gathered a short list of places a well-traveled person ought to see, and it worked less like a sacred text and more like a guide for the imagination. To stand before these sights was to feel your sense of scale quietly shift. A temple could make a person feel small in the most pleasant way. A statue could seem to watch you back. The list also traced the reach of Greek trade and conquest. Since nearly every wonder sat in a land the Greeks knew well, it was tourism, status, and storytelling folded into a single idea. Long before guidebooks or maps of the stars, someone decided that a handful of human achievements deserved to be remembered together. And in choosing them, they began a habit we have never quite let go of. The habit of gathering the world's marvels into one small, portable dream. Only one of the original 7 wonders still stands today, and it is the oldest of them all. The Great Pyramid of Giza was already ancient when the other wonders were built, and it has outlived every one of them. That survival changes how we picture the whole ancient world. The pyramid is not a rumor or a ruin we must imagine. It is a physical weight upon the landscape, catching the same sunlight it caught thousands of years ago. Travelers in Roman times already spoke of it as impossibly old. Medieval visitors treated it as a marvel from some vanished age of giants. Its endurance is also a quiet reminder that history is not fair. We lost the lighthouse that guided ships into Alexandria. We lost the golden statue that filled a temple at Olympia. We lost whole shining cities that once felt permanent. Yet this single monument remains, stubborn and immense, refusing to become a legend. It stands as proof that now and then a human plan can outlast the empire that made it, and even outlast the memory of why it was built at all. The word we translate as wonders meant something closer to things worth seeing. In the original Greek, the term carried the feeling of a sight that stops you in the road, not merely something beautiful or valuable. Beauty is pleasing, but wonder is unsettling in a thrilling way. It is the sensation of standing before something your mind has no easy box for. Ancient visitors did not simply admire these places. They described being overwhelmed, almost frightened, as if the ground of the ordinary had tilted beneath them. That reaction was the entire point. Rulers wanted their people to feel pride, and outsiders to feel awe. Artists and engineers chased the same feeling, because producing it proved their mastery. A wonder had to live at the very edge of what seemed possible. Build too modestly, and no one would speak of it. Build too boldly, and nature might take it back. The 7 wonders balanced on that knife's edge, which is exactly why we still remember them. They were not just large or costly, they were attempts to give a physical shape to the feeling of impossibility itself. There was never a single official list, and ancient writers argued about it happily. The 7 wonders were never sealed inside a treasure chest of stone tablets. Different authors favored different sites, and their choices drifted with fashion, politics, and whatever they could actually reach. One traveler might praise a temple simply because it still stood and was easy to visit. Another might insist on a statue because it represented the peak of an artist's skill. Some lists leaned toward the Greek heartland, while others stretched east toward Egypt and beyond. Walls, palaces, and altars all appeared on one version or another before quietly dropping away. What stayed fixed was not the contents, but the number, and so the list behaved a little like the night sky, where a single place could suddenly grow famous once enough people repeated its name. The disagreement is itself revealing. It shows that wonder lived partly in the eye of the storyteller, not only in the marble. Even in the ancient world, people understood that a marvel becomes greater each time it is described, and that fame travels farther than any traveler ever could. 7 was chosen because the number itself felt complete and lucky. Long before the wonders were gathered, 7 carried a quiet weight across the ancient world. There were 7 known wandering lights in the sky, the sun and moon among them. There were 7 days folded into many calendars. The number felt like a whole set, satisfying to hold in the mind, neither too few to matter, nor too many to remember. That is a subtle kind of genius. By fixing the count at 7, the idea could survive even as its contents changed, because the shape stayed the same. A list of 7 is easy to carry in your head as you drift towards sleep. It turns the sprawling chaos of history into something you can count on your fingers. We still feel the pull of it today, in our 7 seas and the 7 colors of a rainbow. The wonders borrowed that gentle magic. They promised that the vast, unknowable world could be tamed just a little, gathered into a handful of names, and passed from one person to the next, like a smooth stone worn warm from handling. Every one of the original wonders sat within reach of the Greek world. If you spread them across a map, they form a loose ring around the eastern Mediterranean, from the Nile to the coast of Asia Minor. This was not an accident. The people who made the list traveled by ship and on foot, and they could only wonder at what they could plausibly reach. Lands farther east held marvels of their own, but those places lived beyond the horizon of Greek experience, and so they went unlisted. In this way, the 7 wonders quietly reveal the size of one culture's imagination. They map not the whole world, but the world as the Greeks knew it, stitched together by trade routes and shared stories. It is a humbling thought. Every list of marvels is also a confession of its maker's limits, a portrait of how far their curiosity could travel. The ancients were not describing the greatest things on earth. They were describing the greatest things they had heard of, which is a different and far more human thing. Their wonder had a shape, and that shape was the sea they sailed. Most of the wonders were built to impress visitors as much as to honor the gods. These monuments were public statements, carved in the plainest language power owns, which is sheer size. Even when a wonder served a sacred purpose, it also served a political one. A ruler could point to a temple and say, "My city is blessed." A dynasty could raise a tomb and say, "Our name will not fade." Visitors carried those messages home like sparks, retelling them in marketplaces and harbors, until the fame spread far beyond any border. That is why scale mattered so much. A modest shrine could be deeply holy, yet it could never dominate a conversation the way a towering one could. Grandeur was a language everyone understood at a single glance, with no translation required. The wonders also trained the eye of every generation that saw them, teaching people what power was supposed to look like when it took the shape of marble, bronze, and height. In that sense, they were not only buildings, they were arguments made in stone, and they were meant to win. Most of the wonders were destroyed by earthquakes and fire, not by armies. It is tempting to picture their ends as slow, a gentle crumbling across quiet centuries. But many losses arrived suddenly, like nightfall. A single earthquake could snap a giant statue and scatter it across the ground in an afternoon. A fire could race through wooden roofs and turn a sanctuary into ash before morning. Even human hands, often destroyed by accident rather than malice, as builders quietly carried off cut stone to raise new walls and forts. Catastrophe also has a cruel second act. Once a monument is damaged, it becomes easier to loot, harder to repair, and simpler to forget. People move on, the memory blurs, and later writers fill the gaps with guesses. That is why so many wonders feel half real and half mythical to us now. The world that made them was more fragile than it looked, even when the stone appeared eternal. And perhaps that fragility is part of their pull. We remember them not only for rising so high, but for how completely and how quickly the earth could take them back. The Great Pyramid was the tallest structure on Earth for nearly 4,000 years. That is almost impossible to absorb, living as we do among skylines that change every decade. Once it was finished, no building anywhere rose higher for a span of time longer than all of recorded history since. Empires appeared and fell, new religions spread across continents, whole languages were born and forgotten, and through all of it, the pyramid held its record, a fixed point of ambition on the edge of the desert. People who had never heard the pharaoh's name still looked up and felt the same jolt of scale. It became a kind of measuring stick for the imagination itself. If human hands could raise that, what else might be possible? Its long reign as the tallest also shows how rare such ambition truly is. Most societies aim for the durable and the useful, not the record-breaking. To surpass the pyramid required not merely better tools, but an entire civilization willing to bend thousands of lives toward a single point in the sky. The pyramid's height is not really a number. It is a story about focus held steady across time. The Great Pyramid began as one king's tomb and became the whole world's landmark. From the start, it was designed for a single person's journey into the afterlife, not for crowds of admirers. Yet across the centuries, it quietly slipped free of its original purpose. Priests once moved through its temples with ritual certainty. Later, foreign visitors arrived with questions instead of offerings. Some came to measure it, some came to marvel, some came to prove a favorite theory and left carrying more doubts than they arrived with. Long before guidebooks existed, it had become a landmark travelers could name when everything else in the world seemed to shift. Conquerors could seize the land around it, but they could not lift that silhouette from the horizon. A tomb meant to serve one soul had become a possession of all humanity, shared by everyone who ever stood before it and felt time stretch. Even now it draws scholarship, tourism, and awe into the same square of desert. It is a rare thing, a monument that outgrew the very reason it was built and became something its makers could never have imagined. The Great Pyramid once gleamed so brightly, it could be seen shining from far across the plain. Picture it not as the rough, stepped mountain of today, but as a smooth slope of pale, polished limestone, so bright in the Egyptian sun that the eye could barely rest on it. The outer casing was fitted with astonishing care, turning the whole structure into something that looked almost unnatural, as if a piece of pure geometry had been set down in the sand. That brilliance was not only for beauty, light itself was sacred in Egyptian thought, and such dazzling brightness spoke of order, permanence, and the favor of the gods. Over the centuries, that polished skin vanished, loosened by earthquakes and carried away for other buildings, until only the rugged core remained. Knowing this changes how we feel the monument today. When you look at its weathered stones, try to imagine the mirror it once was, a beacon of white fire on the horizon. It was built to be seen from a great distance and to look impossibly finished, flawless, and smooth, more like a fallen fragment of the sky than a thing of earth. The pyramid was raised with ramps, sledges, and relentless organization, not with magic. This was no single clever trick performed once and forgotten. It was a triumph of planning that had to work every day, in heat and dust, with almost no room for error. Teams hauled heavy blocks on wooden sledges, and workers poured water onto the sand ahead of them to reduce the drag. A small discovery that saved uncountable hours of labor. Crews had roles, schedules, and overseers. Food supply mattered as much as muscle, since no one lifts history on an empty stomach. Perhaps the most impressive tool of all was simple cooperation, the ability of many hands to move in rhythm toward one distant goal. Quarrying, transport, and placement could never fall out of step, or the whole effort would stall. The site worked like a living machine made of people. When we search for a lost secret behind the pyramids, we often miss the real marvel hiding in plain sight. The wonder is not some vanished technology. It is what happens when a society chooses a single purpose and patiently organizes thousands of lives around it. The pyramid was built by skilled, well-fed workers, not by the whip-driven slaves of legend. For a long time, people imagined vast crowds of captives dragging stone under cruel overseers, an image borrowed more from later stories than from the evidence. But near the pyramids, archaeologists uncovered the remains of a whole workers' town, with bakeries, breweries, and the bones of cattle brought in to feed the crews. The workers ate well by the standards of their age. Some who died on the job were buried in honored tombs close to the kings they served, a privilege no disposable laborer would ever receive. Marks left inside the monument show organized gangs with proud, playful names. This was demanding, dangerous work, and no doubt many suffered under it. But it seems to have been the labor of a people building something they understood as sacred, rotated in from their farms during the seasons when the Nile flooded the fields. It gently rewrites the whole scene in our minds. The pyramid was not a monument to human misery alone. It was, in part, a shared project of a nation, fed and housed and remembered. Many of the pyramid's stones were cut and fitted so precisely that a blade cannot slip between them. Precision like this is not only about neatness, it is about control. When stone faces meet cleanly, weight passes through them in predictable ways, and a structure gains a stability that rough stacking can never provide. The builders shaped enormous blocks so they could rest against one another with tight, patient seams, and they did it with tools that sound almost impossibly humble. Copper chisels, stone hammers, and wet sand used as an abrasive seem inadequate until you remember what patience can accomplish. Skilled workers learned the personality of each block, watching for hidden fractures, adjusting angles, checking surfaces again and again. This was craftsmanship on a colossal scale, repeated countless times without losing its discipline. Even where the seams are not perfect, the overall effect is quietly astonishing. The pyramid feels less like piled rubble and more like a single deliberate design, held together by nothing but its own weight and the care of the hands that shaped it. Across thousands of years, those tight joints are still keeping their ancient promise. Deep inside the pyramid, ancient graffiti records the names of the work gangs, not the praises of the king. In a monument built to glorify a single ruler, some of the most human traces belong instead to the people who did the lifting. Hidden in spaces never meant for public eyes, workers left the names of their teams, with proud and cheerful labels like the friends of a king or the drunkards of a pharaoh. It is the casual, living voice of laborers talking to one another across the centuries, not a solemn inscription meant for ceremony. Those marks matter because they push back against the old image of faceless, nameless toil. They suggest organized crews with identity, rivalry, and pride. And they place ordinary people right inside a story, usually told only from the throne downward. You can almost picture a worker pausing, brush in hand, claiming a small moment of presence before returning to stone and sweat. Because of them, the pyramid is not only an object, it is evidence of a workforce that ate, joked, competed, and endured together, and quietly signed their names where they thought only their friends would ever read them. The pyramid is aligned to true north with a precision that still puzzles engineers. Before you even consider its height or its weight, there is another kind of ambition hidden in it, the ambition of orientation. Its four sides face the four cardinal directions almost exactly, an accuracy that would be difficult to match even with modern instruments, let alone with none at all. To achieve it, the builders must have watched the sky with tremendous patience, tracking the slow circling of the stars or the crisp shadows of the sun to find a true line. That kind of work cannot be rushed, because the sky keeps its own unhurried time. It also demanded agreement, since the entire project had to commit to a chosen direction from its very first stone. When that alignment succeeded, it turned the pyramid into a statement about order in the universe itself. The building does not merely sit upon the earth, it answers to the heavens. For a people who linked their kings to cosmic balance and stability, that mattered deeply. Every block laid along that invisible axis was a quiet argument that the world could be made orderly by human hands. Narrow shafts climb up through the solid stone, and their purpose is still debated. Deep inside the pyramid, the air changes and sound goes dull, and there you meet openings too slim to be corridors and far too intentional to be accidents. These shafts have sparked argument for generations, precisely because they invite interpretation. Some see simple ventilation, some see symbolic pathways, aimed toward meaningful regions of the sky where certain stars once rose, so the king's soul might travel toward them. Others see practical features tied to the building's construction. What makes them so haunting is the way they sit exactly between function and belief, where the two so easily overlap. In a culture where the heavens shaped religion, a direction could be useful and sacred at the same time. The shafts also remind us that the pyramid is not a solid heap of rock. It is a carefully planned interior landscape, full of choices hidden forever from the public eye. Mystery is not something that gathered on the pyramid over time. It was built into the stone from the beginning, and it keeps drawing questions upward through those narrow, silent passages toward the stars. Later builders quarried the pyramid's gleaming casing to raise the city of Cairo. History can be brutally practical, even when it looks like vandalism. Fine white limestone was valuable, and here sat an enormous supply of it, already cut, already proven strong, waiting on the plateau. As Cairo grew across the centuries, its builders helped themselves, stripping the smooth outer stones to raise mosques, walls, and houses. This is not only a story of loss, it is also a strange kind of continuity in which ancient stone was folded quietly into a new city, as if one age physically carried the next upon its shoulders. It also shows how values shift with distance and time. A wonder can seem untouchable to a visitor from far away, while the people living beside it see a convenient quarry. That tension between preserving the past and reusing it is as old as cities themselves. The pyramid survived the stripping, but it lost its shining face and gained instead the rough, stepped surface we know. A monument built to defy time was gently reshaped by the ordinary need for building stone, and it wears those scars still. The Hanging Gardens may be the most famous wonder that no one can prove ever existed. Some wonders stand in stone. This one stands only in longing. Ancient writers described a green mountain rising above a great city, heavy with shade and perfume, where dust and heat should have ruled. The trouble is that the ground beneath the story stays strangely silent. Archaeologists have never found a set of ruins that everyone agrees matches the descriptions. That gap creates a very particular kind of fascination. The gardens become a test of how history is actually made, and a reminder that a story repeated often enough can harden into fact even when the evidence stays thin. They also show how powerfully the human heart responds to the idea of nature lifted and tamed. A palace can impress us, but a garden blooming in a dry land feels like a small miracle, a soft defiance of the whole surrounding world. Whether the gardens were real, misplaced, or gently exaggerated across the centuries, the tale still pulls the mind toward an ancient horizon, green and impossible, hanging in the air just beyond the reach of proof. For a wonder so famous, it is startling that no Babylonian record ever mentions the gardens. The people of Mesopotamia left behind a great many inscriptions, and they loved to celebrate their building projects with pride, listing canals and temples and palace walls. Yet among all those boastful tablets, not one plainly says, "Here are our hanging gardens, and here is how we raised them." That silence carries real weight. It suggests that the fame of the gardens may have grown far beyond anything the local records support, or that the true garden belonged to some other place entirely. It also reminds us how fragile the evidence of the past can be. Tablets shatter, libraries burn, and whole languages fall out of use, so that what survives is shaped as much by accident as by importance. The result is a mystery with unusually sharp edges. A modern reader expects receipts, and the ancient world does not always provide them. That missing confirmation turns the gardens into a quiet lesson in humility. a reminder that sometimes the past simply refuses to hand us the proof we most want it to give. Some scholars now believe the gardens were in Nineveh, not Babylon at all. The name Babylon casts such a spell that later storytellers found it easy to attach anything magnificent to it. Yet a number of researchers point instead to a different city, Nineveh, a great Assyrian capital, left behind records that speak directly of grand waterworks and cultivated landscapes carried up onto terraces. If they are right, then the famous wonder is not truly missing, it is merely mislabeled, and generations have been gazing at the correct idea through the wrong window. It is a strange thought that a place could be lost simply by being given the wrong address in memory. This possibility reframes the whole mystery as a tangle of translation, reputation, and the way fame drifts. Once a city becomes known for greatness, it draws legends toward itself, the way a bright lamp draws moths in the dark. The debate does not diminish the gardens, it keeps them alive, turning a vanished place into an ongoing act of investigation, rather than a closed and dusty chapter. Somewhere, perhaps, the green terraces still wait under a different name. If the gardens were real, keeping them alive meant lifting water uphill every single day. A stone temple can endure decades of neglect, but a planted terrace cannot survive even a single dry season on its own. Heat pulls the moisture from every leaf. Wind wicks the water from the soil. The sun turns damp earth to dust. So if those high terraces were truly lush, then the city had to feed them water like a steady heartbeat, hour after hour, without pause. That means the gardens were as much an institution as a structure, with laborers assigned to them and failure written plainly in every withering branch. This is why the wonder feels so dramatic. It was not only a matter of size, it was defiance. A daily victory won against the surrounding climate. Every green leaf would have quietly announced that the rulers could command water, time, and human attention on a scale their neighbors could not match. A garden in that dry land was never simply beautiful. It was a performance of control, endlessly repeated, and it would have collapsed the very moment anyone stopped caring for it. Ancient writers guessed that screws, chains, or pumps might have raised the water. To lift water high, you need a motion that can repeat endlessly without breaking down. And the ancient world offered several ingenious answers that sound almost modern when you picture them. A great turning screw could push water upward as it rotated within its casing. A chain of buckets could scoop and spill in a patient, endless loop. A series of pumps could move water in stages, like climbing a staircase one bucketful at a time. Each method demanded strong materials, constant maintenance, and people trained to keep the whole system alive. Each also demanded a source of power, whether from human muscle, laboring animals, or flowing water cleverly redirected to do the work. That hidden effort is part of what makes the gardens so compelling. A visitor would see only greenery and cool shade. Behind the scenes lay a choreographed machine of wood, metal, and tireless labor. If such a mechanism truly existed at that scale, it would stand among the most remarkable technologies of its whole age. The real wonder may not have been what grew, but the unseen engine that kept it alive. In a dry land, a garden was a display of raw power. In a green valley, a garden is merely pleasant. In a parched region, it becomes a proclamation. Water is life, and control over water is control over life itself. A ruler who could spare water for mere ornament was a ruler who had already secured everything more urgent, whose granaries were full and whose canals were safe. So a great garden could deliver a political message without a single spoken word. It said, "We have more than enough." Gardens also created a softer kind of authority than walls and soldiers. They invited admiration rather than fear, welcoming a visitor with shade and fruit and birdsong before quietly overwhelming them. That contrast was part of the effect. Beyond the palace walls, the landscape might be harsh and uncertain, while inside there was coolness and abundance and ease. That difference turned greenery into a kind of theater. It made the palace feel like the very center of the world, and it made the ruler seem like someone who could bend even nature into comfort. Few displays of power have ever been so gentle or so complete. The Greek accounts of the gardens may have been second-hand travelers' tales. Stories move along trade routes as easily as spices and cloth. A merchant hears a marvel described in one city and retells it in the next. A soldier returns from a distant campaign and describes a foreign palace with awe, or perhaps a little exaggeration. Since listeners always hungered for the flavor of far-off places, Greek writers often leaned on such reports, especially when travel was slow, costly, and dangerous. That does not mean they lied. It means they worked with the best whispers they could gather, writing for audiences who loved a marvel. Over time, repetition smooths away all uncertainty. A cautious phrase, like they say quietly, disappears, and a rumor hardens into a statement of fact. The gardens may have grown this way, gaining vivid detail with every retelling as they gained fame. And there is something beautiful in that. It means the wonder became a shared dream, drifting across the ancient Mediterranean and shaped by countless voices. Even if the real garden was modest, the collective telling could raise it, terrace by terrace, into a towering green legend. In the end, the gardens survive as an idea more durable than any stone. Not every wonder needs a ruin to matter. Some live on as questions, and a good question can outlast almost anything. The gardens invite us to think about what we truly praise when we praise a wonder. Is it the object itself, or the idea behind it? A high terrace crowded with trees is an idea of abundance, of engineering bent toward beauty, of comfort wrung from a difficult land. Even if the physical gardens are lost forever, those ideas have traveled through the centuries, inspiring painters and poets and architects who keep trying to make the old dream real. The gardens also gently warn us not to confuse fame with certainty. A story repeated for 2,000 years can still be unproven, and that is not a failure of history, but part of its texture. The ancient world reaches us in fragments, and our minds instinctively stitch them into something whole. The hanging gardens sit forever at that tender seam, exactly where the evidence ends and the imagination begins, green and shimmering and just out of reach. The statue of Zeus at Olympia was built from gold and ivory over a hidden wooden core. To ancient eyes, the materials alone were a declaration. Gold signaled wealth beyond counting, and ivory carried the aura of distance and rarity. This was not carved from a single block, but assembled like a luxurious illusion, with ivory shaped into lifelike skin, and gold beaten into robes that seemed to glow in the torchlight. Imagine stepping into a temple and slowly realizing that the most precious substances you know of have been fashioned into a human figure on the scale of a god. The craft demanded specialists, careful fitting, and constant attention to keep the delicate surfaces from cracking or dimming. It also carried real risk, since treasure invites theft and torch flame invites fire. Yet the choice of materials made the message unmistakable. This Zeus was not merely worshipped. He was displayed as the richest presence in the room, and perhaps the richest presence in all of Greece, a god made not of plain marble or bronze, but of light itself, given weight and a watchful, seated form. Though seated, the god still seemed ready to burst through the roof of his temple. The effect was theatrical in the best possible way. You did not approach the statue across an open plaza where you could measure it calmly from a distance. You entered a temple, let your eyes adjust to the dimness, and then the space itself revealed the impossible scale. The figure sat upon a throne, yet it still filled the interior like a living mountain folded into a room too small for it. Ancient writers loved to say that if this Zeus ever stood, he would tear the roof away. Whether or not that was literally true, the feeling of it mattered far more than the measurement. The temple became a frame, and the statue became the whole story. Light was carefully controlled, with shadows pooling in the corners and highlights catching on the polished gold. Even sound seemed to change, as the murmur of a crowd grew small and hushed. The whole design turned architecture into a single instrument of awe. You were not merely visiting a shrine, you were stepping into a room built entirely around one overwhelming presence. The statue was made by Phidias, the same sculptor who shaped the greatest works of the Parthenon. This was no obscure craftsman, but the most celebrated artist of his age, a man already famous for the sculptures of Athens before he ever came to Olympia. To create the seated Zeus, he treated the statue less like an object to be finished than like a living presence to be summoned. He had to imagine what a worshipper would feel from the temple doorway and what smaller details would reward those who dared to come closer. He had to solve stubborn practical problems, since gold, ivory, and wood all age and shift in different ways, and a single crack could ruin the illusion of life. Stories about his workshop describe a place where art and engineering lived side by side, where bold decisions were tested before they became permanent. What makes it all so captivating is the mindset behind it. His goal was never a merely handsome statue. His goal was presence, a figure that seemed aware, calm, and powerful, as if it belonged in that temple far more than the trembling visitors who came to gaze upon it. Long after everything else was lost, archaeologists found the sculptor's workshop and a cup marked with his name. At Olympia, diggers uncovered a building whose size and shape matched ancient descriptions of the place where the great statue was assembled. Inside, they found the tools and leftover materials of the work, including molds used to shape sheets of glass and gold for a colossal figure. And then, most touching of all, they found a simple drinking cup scratched with a short inscription that reads, "I belong to Phidias." Across more than 2,000 years, that small, ordinary object reaches out and touches us directly. The statue itself is gone, vanished without a clear ending, but here is proof that the artist truly stood on this spot, that he drank from this cup during breaks in his impossible labor. It is a strange and moving thing how a humble piece of pottery can outlast a wonder made of gold. The masterpiece dissolved into rumor, while the worker's cup survived in the earth. Sometimes history keeps the smallest, most human traces long after it has let the grandest achievements slip quietly away. A shallow pool of oil below the statue protected the ivory and doubled its glow. Near the base of the figure lay a basin that served more than one quiet purpose. The oil helped preserve the delicate ivory surfaces in the temple's changing air, but it also transformed the whole experience of seeing the god. Oil catches light quite differently from water. It can hold a warm, steady sheen, and it can throw back the flicker of torches in a way that feels almost alive. Imagine the flames moving above, and then that movement doubling in the dark mirror below, as if the floor itself had caught fire. The reflection would make the gold appear richer and the ivory softer, and it would deepen the shadows that framed the god's calm face. This was not merely a clever trick of maintenance. It was an early art of designing for atmosphere, arranging light and reflection so the figure was seen under exactly the right conditions. The statue was meant to be encountered in a particular way, and the quiet pool of oil helped turn a solemn temple into a stage built entirely for reverence and wonder. Visitors said that standing before the statue could rearrange the mind. People did not write about it the way they wrote about pleasant scenery. They described a sensation closer to standing too near something vast and sacred. For some, the experience brought a deep comfort, as if the world suddenly had a stable center they could lean against. For others, it carried a faint chill, since the sheer scale and the calm expression could make a person feel quietly judged. That emotional range is part of why the statue became so famous. It was not only an object to admire, it was a moment that reordered something inside the one who saw it. Travelers arrived with expectations already inflated by rumor, and still many of them insisted that the reality surpassed everything they had imagined. The setting only deepened the effect, since Olympia was already charged with ritual and fierce competition. By the time you finally entered the temple, your senses were braced for significance, and then the great figure delivered it. The true wonder lay not only in the craftsmanship, but in how completely it could turn an ordinary visitor into a storyteller for the rest of their life. The throne beneath the god was carved into a small universe of figures. Most people picture the god first and forget the seat that held him. Yet the throne itself was a wonder folded inside a wonder. It was crowded with painted and sculpted images, meant to be studied and studied again, dense with gods, heroes, mythical beasts, and scenes of victory. A visitor could read it like a picture story, moving slowly from one detail to the next, discovering patterns and meanings even without knowing every tale. This richness served a purpose. It turned the statue into a whole world rather than a single form. So the eye never ran out of places to rest. But sustained attention is its own kind of power. It keeps a crowd quiet and holds each person lingering, and it invites comparison, since every viewer notices something different and shares it later. The throne was never mere background. It was part of the wonder's deep strategy, using layered images to suggest that this Zeus was not an isolated figure, but the still center of an entire ordered cosmos, reaching outward in every carved and gilded direction. The statue vanished from history without a clear final chapter. One of the saddest truths about ancient marvels is how quietly they can slip away. Materials that seem eternal in stories prove fragile in life. Fire does not care about artistry, and later centuries brought instability, and instability is always dangerous for treasures. When a society shifts, its temples lose their protectors, and priceless objects become targets, or burdens, or simply things no one remembers to guard. The exact path to the statue's end remains uncertain, and that uncertainty gives it a haunting quality. There is no single clear moment when the world watched it fall. Instead, there is a fading, like a lamp going out behind a closed door in an empty house. That vagueness forces us to imagine everything that was lost, not merely the gold and ivory and years of labor, but the experience itself. People had traveled enormous distances just to stand before it. And then, at some unmarked point, that encounter simply became impossible forever. The wonder dissolved into memory, and in time, even the memory grew thin, until only the name and a few astonished descriptions remained. The Temple of Artemis at Ephesus was burned down by a man who simply wanted to be remembered. According to the old story, a man set fire to one of the most beautiful buildings in the world for a single reason: to make his own name unforgettable. In a cruel way, the act worked, since the tale still clings to the temple like smoke that never quite clears. But the aftermath is what turns this into a wonder of human stubbornness. Rather than accept the loss, the people of Ephesus rebuilt on an even grander scale, as if daring history to try again. The new temple became a statement that lasting fame is earned through creation, not destruction. Travelers came from across the sea to see what had risen from the ashes, and they carried the story onward from port to port. Even the attempt to erase the shrine became part of its legend, woven forever into its fame. It is a strange reminder that a monument is never only stone, it is also reputation, and reputation, once kindled, can survive even the fire that was meant to end it. After the fire, the city rebuilt the temple larger and tried to ban the arsonist's name forever. The people of Ephesus were so enraged by the man who burned their sanctuary for glory that they passed a law making it a crime to ever speak or write his name again. It was a punishment aimed at the very thing he wanted, an attempt to erase him from memory completely, to deny him the fame he had killed for. It is one of history's great ironies that we know the story at all, since ancient writers could not resist recording the name he was never meant to keep. His plan half succeeded and half failed, and the tension between the two has kept the tale alive for thousands of years. Meanwhile, the rebuilt temple rose more magnificent than before, and it was this later version that travelers counted among the wonders of the world. The story leaves us with a quiet question about memory itself. We remember the destroyer we tried to forget, and we half forget the countless patient builders who raised the temple twice. Fame, it seems, does not always reward the deserving. The great temple was deliberately raised on soft marshland to help it survive earthquakes. This seems almost impossible at first. Marble suggests permanence, while a marsh suggests shifting, unstable softness, and yet the builders chose the site on purpose. In a land prone to trembling earth, they reasoned that soft, layered ground beneath the foundations could absorb the shock of a quake, cushioning the enormous structure where solid rock might have cracked and shattered. To keep the temple from simply sinking into the mud, they are said to have packed the foundations with layers of charcoal and fleeces of wool, building a vast, springy cushion under all that stone. It was a remarkable act of engineering imagination, meeting one danger by embracing another. The shimmering marble above announced permanence and glory, while beneath it, a clever, hidden design quietly negotiated with the restless ground. For every visitor who felt safe within those soaring columns, that safety rested on choices made long before. Choices that took the invisible power under the earth seriously. A wonder so often looks like pure art, and yet it survives, when it survives at all, because of hidden engineering. Inside, a forest of towering columns made visitors feel completely surrounded. Approaching the sanctuary was like stepping into a grove of stone that never shed its leaves. The columns marched in long, receding rows, each one multiplying the sense of scale until the eye simply gave up trying to count them. The effect was not only about size, it was about rhythm. Repetition creates its own quiet power, and the temple used repetition the way a slow drumbeat holds a steady pulse. As you moved through it, the spaces between the columns opened and closed like slow breathing, offering glimpses of shadow and brightness in turn. The building could hush a crowd without anyone speaking, because the architecture itself did the speaking. A single grand doorway can impress a visitor, but a whole ring of soaring supports can overwhelm them entirely, folding them into the structure's vast order. Ancient visitors described feeling held inside the temple's geometry, as if the human body had no choice but to obey the shape around it. The columns were never mere decoration or support. They were the temple's spell, cast in marble, drawing every eye upward and inward at once. The Artemis worshipped here was not the swift huntress of familiar myth. If you arrived expecting the goddess of the bow and the forest, a slender figure in a short tunic, you would have been surprised by what you found. At Ephesus, Artemis wore a very different identity, shaped by older local roots that reached back before the Greek stories. Here she was a goddess of protection, abundance, and the teeming life of the city, tied to fertility and the welfare of the whole community. Her most famous images show her covered with rows of mysterious rounded shapes across her chest, long debated and never fully explained, symbols of nourishment and plenty that owe nothing to the woodland archer. That difference matters, because it reveals how flexible ancient religion could be. A single name could travel across the world, while its meaning quietly transformed as it met new landscapes and new people. Pilgrims did not journey to Ephesus merely to admire a beautiful building. They came to meet the specific power they believed lived within it. This local Artemis belonged to her city the way a guardian belongs to a household, personal, present, and entirely her own. The temple served at once as a sanctuary, a bank, and a source of civic pride. It functioned as a sacred vault, a public symbol, and a place of refuge, all in the same soaring space. People trusted holy ground, and so they brought their valuables to store under the goddess's divine protection, which made the temple economically important as well as spiritually so. It also offered asylum, a place where the ordinary rules of violence were suspended, and a desperate person might find a pause from pursuit. At the same time, the building broadcast the city's wealth and status to every traveler who arrived by road or by sea. Ephesus could gesture toward it and say, "We are rich, we are organized, and we are blessed." These roles reinforced one another in a gentle cycle. Wealth funded grandeur, grandeur drew pilgrims, and pilgrims brought offerings and trade that renewed the wealth. The temple became a living center of the city's identity, where belief and daily practical life were woven tightly together. It was never a quiet corner set aside for prayer. It was a beating civic heart, and it happened to be made of marble. Kings and wealthy merchants competed with one another to fund the temple. Money flowed toward it because a donation bought a kind of immortality. A ruler could give lavishly and appear pious, generous, and powerful, all in a single gesture. A merchant could contribute and quietly signal his success to rivals and partners, in a world where reputation decided opportunity. Funding also created belonging. If you helped raise the shrine, you gained a share in its fame, a claim on something that would outlast your own brief life. The temple became a stage where the ambitious could compete without open conflict, their rivalry expressed in marble and gold instead of blood. Their gifts were never only offerings. They were announcements. Visitors could see plainly that the city attracted patrons from far beyond its own walls, and that visible reach drew still more attention and more wealth. This is how the great wonders truly grew. They were not simply built by architects and laborers. They were fed by ambition arriving from every direction, each contributor hoping to bind their name to something glittering and public that time itself might never manage to forget. Today, a single reassembled column is nearly all that marks where the temple stood. What remains now is only the faintest echo of the wonder, yet even one column can carry an entire vanished world in its shadow. The lone pillar standing on the marshy site was pieced back together from scattered fragments, like a puzzle assembled from centuries of loss, each broken piece hinting at the hundreds that once rose around it. There is a strange power in that solitary column. It lets a visitor stand on the spot and imagine the forest of stone that once closed the sky into shaded corridors, filling the emptiness with remembered grandeur. The column becomes a bridge between imagination and evidence, asking you not merely to trust an old story, but to see a real survivor patched together from what time happened to spare. Birds nest upon it now, and water pools around its base where a mighty temple once stood. It is a humbling place, quiet and almost forgotten, and yet a single fragment, if it carries enough meaning, can still be a landmark, still able to summon the ghost of one of the ancient world's most beautiful buildings. One tomb at Halicarnassus was so famous that its name became a common word. When we speak today of a mausoleum, a grand building raised to hold the dead, we are quietly repeating the name of a single ancient tomb and of the ruler buried inside it. That is a rare and remarkable kind of afterlife, not carved into stone but woven into language itself. It also tells us how astonishing the structure must have seemed to those who saw it. People did not describe it as merely a fine local tomb. They spoke of it as a marvel that belonged to the entire world. Over the long centuries, the original building crumbled and fell, yet the word kept walking forward, attaching itself to new memorials in new countries and new tongues. Every time the word is spoken now, it carries a faint echo of that lost coastal monument. This wonder proves that architecture can travel farther than any army ever marched. It can leave a lasting print not only on a skyline, but on the very way that human beings think and speak and remember their dead, long after the stone itself has turned to dust. The tomb was built for a ruler by his grieving wife, who was also his sister. Mausolus governed the region of Caria under the shadow of the Persian Empire. And when he died, the woman who had ruled beside him poured her grief into stone. She was both his queen and, by the custom of their dynasty, his sister, and she was determined that his memory would tower over the coastline forever. She gathered the finest artists and architects of the Greek world to raise a tomb unlike any before it. Ancient writers say her mourning was so profound that she drove the whole project forward with fierce devotion, even as her own health failed. She would not live to see it finished, and the work was completed after her death, a monument to love and loss carried on by hands other than hers. There is something deeply human buried in all that scale and ambition. Beneath the marble and sculpture lies a simpler story of one person who could not bear to let another be forgotten, and who turned private sorrow into a public wonder that outlasted them both by many centuries. Legend says the grieving queen mixed her husband's ashes into her daily drink. According to a story told and retold in the ancient world, Artemisia loved Mausolus so deeply that after his death she could not bear to part with him at all. And so, the tale goes, she took a portion of his ashes, stirred them into her wine, and drank them day by day, making her own body his living tomb. Whether or not it is literally true, the story has clung to the monument for thousands of years, a small dark jewel of devotion set beside all that marble. It says something about how the ancients understood grief as a force powerful enough to blur the line between the living and the dead. The great tomb rising on the coast was the public face of that mourning, visible for miles. This quieter legend is its private shadow, intimate and strange. Together they suggest a love or a grief that refused every ordinary boundary. Long after the building fell, This whispered story survived alongside it, reminding us that the wonders were raised not only by engineering, but out of the oldest and deepest human feelings. The tomb's design fused Greek, Egyptian, and Near Eastern styles into one bold form. This was no simple copy of a Greek temple, and it was not purely a local creation either. It was a deliberate blend, meant to impress many kinds of visitors at once, and to speak several architectural languages in a single breath. Rising from a tall rectangular base, it carried a ring of Greek columns, and above them, a stepped pyramid crowned by an enormous sculpture, a marriage of ideas gathered from across the known world. That mixture mattered, because it mirrored the crossroads world of the Eastern Mediterranean, where trade, diplomacy, and conquest brought distant cultures into constant contact. The building became a kind of public translation, declaring that its ruler belonged to this region, while also standing shoulder to shoulder with the grandest ideas from abroad. That confidence is part of what made it a wonder. It was not merely large, it was sophisticated in its very identity, proof that art can be political without a single spoken slogan. Sometimes style alone can announce who a ruler wished to be, and this tomb announced it in stone to everyone who passed. 4 of the most celebrated sculptors of the age each carved one side of the tomb. Such was the fame of the project that it drew the greatest artists of the Greek world to a single coastal city. And the story goes that they divided the great monument among themselves, one master to each of its 4 faces. They wrapped the tomb in storytelling, covering it with carved scenes of battle, of charging horses, and of mythical heroes locked in struggle, so that the building became a stone tapestry you could walk around and read. From a distance, you saw only the towering silhouette. Up close, you could lose long minutes tracing the muscles of a warrior or the terror on a single carved face. Ancient writers said the sculptors competed so fiercely, each hoping to outdo the others, that even after their royal patrons had died, they refused to abandon the work, unwilling to leave such a masterpiece unfinished. Whether or not that is true, it captures something real about the tomb. It was not the vision of one mind, but a gathering of rival geniuses, each pouring their finest work into a single shared and unforgettable wonder. For centuries, the tomb's great height helped guide sailors toward the coast. Long before a ship reached the harbor, the monument could announce the city, rising far above the surrounding buildings against the open sky. It served as a visual anchor, a fixed and welcome point that told sailors they were nearing land, safety, and trade. That practical role blended perfectly with the ruler's ambition, for a ruler rarely minds being useful when usefulness also spreads his fame. Imagine approaching after long days on the open water, tired and salt-worn, and seeing that towering shape standing calm against the horizon. It would feel like both a greeting and a boast. It said, "This place is wealthy enough to build far beyond mere necessity." It said, "Someone powerful is remembered here." For travelers who could not read the local language, the height itself spoke clearly and needed no translation. Sailors would point it out to newcomers and describe it in distant ports, carrying its image across the sea. In this quiet way, the tomb helped map the whole coastline in human memory, a monument to the dead that watched faithfully over the living as they came home. Earthquakes toppled the tomb, and later Crusader knights quarried its ruins for a castle. The fall of a wonder is rarely a single dramatic instant. A series of earthquakes across the centuries loosened the great monument stone by stone, turning small shifts into widening cracks, and cracks at last into collapse. For a long time, the ruins lay scattered but still grand, until a new age arrived with new needs. The Knights of St. John, building a fortress on the coast, found in the fallen tomb a ready supply of finely cut stone, and they carried it away to raise their castle walls. It is almost poetic in its bluntness. A memorial built to glorify one man's memory was pulled apart to protect the lives of many. Its elegant marble turned toward endurance and war. Some of the tomb's beautiful sculptures were even burned to make lime or set into the fortress as decoration. What one age treasured as sacred another simply saw as useful material close at hand. The wonder did not so much vanish as disperse, scattered into castle and dust, until only fragments and its own borrowed name remained to mark that it had ever stood at all. Some of the tomb's finest sculptures now rest in a museum far from home. The monument broke apart, but pieces of its artistry survived the fall. Centuries later, fragments were gathered from the old fortress and the scattered ground, carried across the sea and set on display far from the coast where they were carved. This relocation changes the way we meet the wonder. In a quiet museum hall, you can stand close to a marble warrior or a rearing stone horse, study the chisel marks, and see details that once stood high overhead, meant to be admired only from far below. In a sense, you meet the ancient sculptors almost face to face. Yet something is also lost, for these figures were designed for a specific place, completed by the open sky and the lines of the building around them. Their new home raises a hard and lasting question about how we care for the past. Is it better to keep fragments safe far away, or to leave them where they belong even as time wears them down? However we answer, the surviving pieces still act as ambassadors, whispering that the wonder was real and hinting at the vast richness that has slipped away. The Colossus of Rhodes was a victory monument melted down from the weapons of a defeated enemy. The city of Rhodes had endured a long and terrifying siege, and when the danger finally lifted, the attackers left behind a fortune in abandoned war machines and bronze equipment. Rather than simply celebrate their survival, the Rhodians did something far more striking. They gathered the metal of the enemy's engines of war and transformed it into a towering statue of their protector god. There is something deeply satisfying in that act, turning the instruments of destruction into a symbol of peace and protection. Every bronze plate could carry an invisible history, once a weapon meant to break the city, now part of a shining guardian who watched over it. To citizens who still remembered the fear of the siege, the meaning would have been powerful. It told them that they had not merely survived the assault, they had absorbed the threat and remade it into pride. And it served as a quiet warning to any future enemy. Your machines may reach our shores, the great statue seemed to say, but they might leave again transformed into monuments to our strength. The Colossus honored Helios, the sun god and guardian of the island. The choice was not mere decoration. Rhodes claimed a special bond with the sun, and by raising a giant image of Helios, the city tied its own safety to a divine guardian who rose faithfully every single morning. That symbolism carried a quiet comfort. A storm can swallow ships and an army can surround walls, but the sunrise always returns, bringing with it the sense that order still holds and the world will go on. Building a colossal Helios turned that daily reassurance into a permanent presence, standing watch above the harbor. It also made the island's faith visible to outsiders. A sailor who knew nothing of Rhodian politics could still understand a radiant god towering over the coast, arms perhaps lifted toward the light. To honor Helios on such a scale was to declare that the city's protection was not only military but cosmic, watched over from above. The statue implied that any threat to Rhodes would have to face far more than mere walls and soldiers. It would have to face the sun itself, cast in gleaming bronze and set against the sky. The Colossus stood for barely half a century before an earthquake brought it down. There is a cruel twist folded into its story. After all that effort, all that celebration and pride, the earth simply shook, and the giant broke at its weakest point and fell. Its brief life makes the achievement feel even more dramatic, revealing how thin the line can be between triumph and ruin. In the moment of collapse, the city faced a painful choice. Should they rebuild the fallen guardian, or accept the loss and live beside the broken symbol? Remarkably, the people of Rhodes left it where it lay. An oracle had warned them against raising it again, and so the shattered Colossus remained on the ground for centuries, a wonder even in its ruin. A standing giant says, "We have overcome." A fallen giant says something quieter and stranger, that even the greatest works are fragile, and that nature keeps its own counsel. The earthquake did not only break the bronze, it changed the whole meaning of the monument. from a shout of confidence into a long, thoughtful pause, remembered ever after not merely for its height, but for its sudden fall. Despite the famous image, the Colossus almost certainly never straddled the harbor. For centuries, artists loved to picture the giant standing with a leg on either side of the harbor mouth, ships sailing between its ankles beneath its towering form. It is an irresistible image, and it is almost certainly false. A statue posed that way would have created impossible problems, blocking the very ships it supposedly welcomed and collapsing under its own strange balance the moment the ground trembled. It is far more likely that the Colossus stood upright and whole near the harbor, visible to every arriving vessel without ever endangering them. That more grounded picture is still deeply impressive, a giant of bronze gazing out to sea. The straddling legend probably grew simply because people love a story that feels impossible, and because later artists found the dramatic pose thrilling to paint. This gap between the real and the imagined reveals how wonder keeps growing in the retelling. The true statue was astonishing on its own, and yet the legend inflated it further still. Separating the two does not spoil the magic. It reveals how the human imagination keeps building long after the builders themselves have laid down their tools. The Colossus was a skin of bronze plates stretched over a skeleton of iron and stone. This was not a solid figure poured all at once, but something closer to a vast hollow shell, its gleaming metal surface wrapped around a strong hidden framework within. That method made the enormous project possible, but it also made it daring. Every bronze plate had to be shaped, fitted, and secured with seams strong enough to withstand wind and weather, while the iron skeleton beneath carried the terrible weight. Think for a moment of the sheer logistics. Bronze had to be produced, hauled, and lifted into place high above the ground. The inner frame had to be forged in pieces that locked together reliably. The builders had to solve every problem that great scale invents, including how to keep the lower sections stable while the upper body was still unfinished, growing slowly toward the sky. Some accounts say they heaped earth around the rising statue as they worked, building a hill that grew with the god. To a visitor, the finished Colossus would have looked like a miracle. In truth, it was something just as impressive, an orchestra of metalwork skill performed in full public view. Even fallen and broken, the Colossus drew curious travelers for nearly 1,000 years. A toppled wonder can become a destination all its own. Visitors came not to admire a perfect statue, but to grasp its scale in the most human way possible, standing close beside the enormous scattered pieces on the ground. A fallen giant is oddly intimate. You could walk right up to the fragments, see how the bronze plates were joined, and marvel at how a single finger might be larger than a person. The ruins also served as proof. Anyone might claim that a city had once raised a giant, but the great broken limbs made the boast undeniable, impossible to wave away. That is why the shattered Colossus kept its fame alive for so long, inviting a new kind of storytelling from a fresh and melancholy angle. Travelers could describe not merely a marvel, but a marvel that had been defeated by the earth itself. And that contrast holds a special power. It makes a listener lean in closer, because it feels like a myth told in real metal, immense and humbled, lying quietly beneath the same sun the statue had been built to honor. An ancient writer marveled that few people could wrap their arms around the statue's thumb. That single detail lands like a small shock, because it is so easy to picture. You need no training in engineering to understand it. A thumb, one of the smallest parts of a body, scaled up until a grown person could not encircle it with both arms. It is exactly the kind of comparison that turns abstract size into something the body can feel. If one modest part was that large, then the whole towering figure becomes almost impossible to hold in the mind. These descriptions of separate limbs also hint at how people actually experience the ruins. Travelers walking among the fallen pieces would naturally focus on the recognizable forms, a hand, a foot, a face, because those familiar shapes let the imagination rebuild the vanished giant. The image of the great thumb carries a quieter feeling as well. A god's hand made so vast suggests protection, authority, and perhaps judgment. Even broken and scattered on the ground, the statue could still make a visitor feel small. not through distance and height any longer, but through sheer nearness to something that had once towered over everyday life. Thousands of years later, the fallen Colossus helped inspire the Statue of Liberty. When a new Colossus was planned for a harbor in the modern world, its makers looked back across the centuries to the giant of Rhodes for their model, a towering figure standing guard where the sea meets the land. The Statue of Liberty is in many ways a deliberate echo of that ancient wonder, another huge form of metal raised near the water, greeting all who arrive by ship. The connection was made explicit in a famous poem written for the newer statue, which opens by naming the brazen giant of Greek fame, and then sets its own Colossus gently apart from it, where the ancient Helios blazed with conquest and civic pride. The modern figure was imagined instead as a mother of exiles, lifting her lamp beside a golden door. It is a beautiful thread to follow across the ages, a wonder that fell in an earthquake more than 2,000 years ago, still shaped how a much later people chose to welcome strangers to their shore. The Colossus was lost, yet its idea sailed quietly on and helped design one of the most recognized figures in the world. The Lighthouse of Alexandria was among the very tallest structures of the ancient world. Rising in stages from a great square base to a slender crown, it towered over the harbor of one of antiquity's richest cities, a marvel of height in an age of low horizons. For sailors approaching from the open sea, it was the first sign of the city, a tall, pale finger against the sky long before the docks came into view. Its scale alone placed it among the wonders, for few peoples had ever dared to build so high for so practical a purpose. Most great heights of the ancient world were tombs or temples, monuments to gods and kings. This one was different. It was a working tower, raised to serve the living and the arriving, and yet it was built with all the ambition of a sacred monument. That blend of usefulness and grandeur is part of what made it unforgettable. It proved that a structure could save lives and still take the breath away. That engineering meant to guide ships home could also stand among the proudest achievements of an entire civilization, gazing calmly out over the restless sea. The lighthouse stood on the island of Pharos, whose name became a word for lighthouse itself. The little island guarded the entrance to Alexandria's harbor, and the great tower took its name. But soon the tower so eclipsed the place that the name came to mean the thing it carried. In several languages that descend from Latin and Greek, a word for lighthouse still echoes that ancient island directly, a small linguistic monument to a building long since fallen. It is a rare kind of fame, a structure leaving its fingerprints on everyday speech, so that people who have never heard of Alexandria still speak its wonder's name without knowing it. That linguistic journey also tells us how widely sailors must have spoken of the landmark. Seafaring communities share knowledge quickly because survival depends on it, and a tower that guided ships safely to harbor became a story that spread from port to port. In time, people did not merely say there is a lighthouse. They said, in effect, there is a Pharos, a tall guide promising safe arrival. Even after the tower itself vanished, its name kept working faithfully, a small beacon still burning quietly inside the language we use today. A great fire and a polished mirror together threw the lighthouse's light far out to sea. The genius of a lighthouse lies not only in its height, but in its focus. A fire alone glows, yet without help it cannot reach far enough across the dark water to matter. To become a true guide, that light had to be gathered, shaped, and aimed outward. Ancient accounts describe a flame kept burning at the tower's summit, and a polished metal surface set behind or beside it, to catch the glow and cast it toward the horizon like a blade of light. Such a design would have demanded careful placement and endless fuel, for a beacon cannot take the night off. Picture the workers whose task was to climb the great tower, tend the flame, and keep the signal steady through wind and salt air, hour after hour. Their true audience was not anyone nearby, but sailors far out at sea, scanning the blackness for any sign that land was near and friendly. The result married practical engineering to something close to drama, for a single distant point of light could turn a crew's fear into hope in an instant. Legend later claimed the lighthouse's mirror could burn enemy ships from afar. As the centuries passed and the real workings of the tower blurred into memory, the stories about it grew ever grander. Some tales insisted that its great polished mirror could do far more than guide friendly vessels home. It could gather the sun's rays, they said, and hurl them across the water to set an approaching enemy fleet ablaze, a weapon of pure light guarding the harbor. There is almost certainly no truth in it, for no ancient mirror could have focused sunlight with such deadly power across so great a distance. But the legend is revealing all the same. It shows how a wonder, once famous, keeps growing in the imagination long after anyone remembers exactly how it worked. A tower already astonishing for its height and its guiding flame became, in the retelling, a marvel of almost magical power. The story says less about the lighthouse itself than about the people who told it, and their instinct that so great a structure must surely hold secrets beyond the ordinary. Even the myths that gather around a wonder are a kind of tribute, proof that it captured the mind completely. The lighthouse guarded the grain fleets that fed a hungry empire. A lighthouse is not only romance and navigation, it can be a matter of survival itself, for grain helps no one if the ship carrying it is wrecked upon the rocks outside the harbor. Alexandria stood at the heart of an enormous trade in grain, and great fleets carried its cargo across the sea to feed distant, crowded cities. Reliable arrivals meant stability, and stability meant peace. A safe approach to the harbor reduced losses, kept prices steadier, and made the whole vast supply chain feel a little less like a gamble against the weather. That protection rippled outward far beyond the docks. When you picture the lighthouse, it helps to imagine what it meant to people who never saw the sea at all. The families in far cities whose daily bread depended on ships arriving safely and on time. The tower's light was a quiet partner in that long chain, helping loaded vessels reach the harbor mouth intact. In that sense, the Great Beacon was a public service on a monumental scale, a tower of stone and fire that helped keep distant cities fed for another day. The lighthouse stood in the same city as the greatest library of the ancient world. Alexandria was not only a city of ships and grain, it was a city of ideas, home to a legendary library and a community of scholars who gathered texts and measured the world with their minds. The lighthouse belonged naturally to that same restless spirit of ambition, for it was applied knowledge made visible, geometry and materials, and patient planning raised into a tower that solved a real and dangerous problem. Imagine a visitor arriving by sea, guided safely in by the Great Beacon, then stepping into streets where learning was prized and books were gathered from across the known world. The city offered two kinds of light at once, one for sailors on the water and one for thinkers in their halls. That pairing is part of why Alexandria still glows so brightly in our memory. It presented itself as a place where human skill could master both the darkness of the sea and the darkness of ignorance. The beacon greeted every arrival with light, and the library offered a different, quieter illumination within, and together they made the city a lamp for the whole ancient world. Earthquakes slowly wore the lighthouse down over the course of 1,000 years. Unlike some wonders that fell in a single dramatic moment, the great tower fought a long, slow battle against a restless earth. Quakes need not topple a tower in one blow to defeat it in the end. They can crack its joints, weaken its corners, and loosen its heavy stone, so that each later tremor does a little more damage than the one before. Across the centuries, the lighthouse shifted from a proud, complete beacon into a wounded landmark, still famous but increasingly fragile, its upper stages falling away while the lower base stubbornly remained. Its long decline is strangely moving. This was a structure built to fight the darkness, standing faithfully for far longer than most empires last, and still the patient ground beneath it slowly won. The final collapse would have felt like losing a trusted voice in the night, one the sailors of Alexandria had relied upon for longer than anyone could remember. It reminds us that even the most useful and beloved wonders live at the mercy of forces they can never bargain with, and that time wears down stone as surely as it wears down memory. Many of the lighthouse's fallen blocks may lie today on the floor of the harbor. When a great coastal monument collapses, the sea becomes both thief and vault. Waves scatter the stones, Sand buries the details, and the shoreline slowly shifts, and yet the heaviest blocks can also settle where they fall and simply wait through the centuries. In the waters off Alexandria, divers have found enormous carved stones and fragments resting on the seabed, and some researchers believe pieces of the ancient lighthouse are among them, tumbled down where they fell so long ago. That possibility is thrilling, for it turns the search for the wonder into a dive rather than a dig. Instead of dust and trenches, there is filtered blue light, drifting silt, and carved stone lying quietly on the bottom. It also gently changes how we imagine the tower's end. Its collapse was perhaps not a complete disappearance after all. Parts of the great beacon may still exist, merely moved into a quieter resting place made of seawater, sleeping beneath the very harbor it once helped ships to cross. The wonder that guarded sailors may now lie where those same sailors passed above it, waiting in the dark. Long after the lighthouse fell, a ruler built a stone fort from its scattered remains. Where the great tower had stood for so many centuries, a later age raised something new upon the same commanding spot at the harbor's edge. A sultan built a fortress there, and it seems the builders made use of the enormous fallen blocks of the ancient beacon, folding the ruins of one wonder into the walls of a new stronghold. It is the same quiet story we meet again and again among the wonders, a monument stone outliving its purpose and being pressed into fresh service by a different world. The fort still stands on that spot today, guarding the harbor mouth as the lighthouse once did, though now against ships rather than against darkness. In a strange way, there is continuity in it, for the location kept its role as a sentinel even after the wonder itself was gone. A traveler standing at that fortress today may be surrounded, without knowing it, by stones that once climbed toward a beacon of fire. One age can quite literally build itself out of the remains of another, and the sea keeps watch over both. When the ancient wonders vanished, new lists rose to take their place. As the centuries passed, travelers kept searching for the feeling those old stories had promised them. They journeyed to the famous sites and found instead ruins, missing statues, and foundations half buried in sand and grass. That absence quietly invited replacement. People began naming new wonders, ones that still stood, or that better matched the values of their own age. Later lists celebrated holy places and relics, then great feats of engineering and exploration, then marvels drawn from every corner of a wider, better-known world. Yet the urge behind every list stayed exactly the same. Human beings want a small handful of landmarks that can stand in for the whole vast planet, something they can hold in the mind before sleep. A list turns the sprawling chaos of history into a manageable set of names. New lists are always a little controversial, since they reveal who gets included and who is left out. But they also keep curiosity alive and traveling, even when the originals crumble away. The idea of wonder refuses to die, and simply finds new stone and new marvels to inhabit. In the year 2007, the whole world was invited to vote for 7 new wonders. This turned an ancient idea into a modern spectacle, with a single date that millions of people could circle and argue over. Instead of a few Greek writers quietly trading names, vast crowds took part through telephones and the reach of the internet, casting their votes for the places they loved best. The moment mattered because it reshaped what the word wonder could mean. Where once a tiny circle of educated travelers had decided, now the whole world could help choose. That shift naturally sparked argument. Should a wonder be ancient or simply extraordinary? Should popularity decide, or scholars and engineers? Some serious institutions questioned the whole effort, and that criticism became part of the story too. Yet the vote did something undeniably powerful. It sent millions of people searching for landmarks they had never heard of, comparing distant cultures with fresh and curious eyes. In a single sweeping campaign, it made the heritage of the world feel current, shared, and alive again. And it gathered a new 7 to carry the ancient torch of wonder forward into our own age. The Great Wall of China is not a single wall at all, but a vast system built across many centuries. People often imagine one continuous ribbon of stone snaking over the hills. but the reality is closer to a living network, built and rebuilt again and again across more than 1,000 years. Different sections served different purposes, and the true story includes trenches, packed earthen ramparts, stone barriers, watchtowers, and deliberate gaps where the land itself formed a defense. Some stretches follow high ridgelines for the view they command. Others guard the narrow passes where armies are naturally funneled. Supporting forts and signal towers made the barrier far more than a mere wall. It worked as a whole frontier system, a piece of border infrastructure rather than a single monument. This changes how you picture it entirely. The wonder is not only its famous length, but its coverage, its planning, and its patient adaptation to terrain that ranges from green mountains to bare desert. When you stand on one surviving stretch today, you are seeing just a single chapter of an immense conversation between geography and power, written across the land in earth and stone over countless generations. Despite the famous claim, you cannot actually see the Great Wall from the moon. It is one of the most repeated facts in the world, and it is simply not true. From the moon, the entire Earth is a small, bright marble, and no single human structure, not the wall, not a city, is remotely visible to the naked eye. Even from the much lower orbit where astronauts circle the planet, the wall is extraordinarily hard to pick out, for although it is very long, it is also quite narrow, and it is built from materials that blend into the landscape around it. Astronauts have said they looked for it and could not find it without help. And yet the myth endures, passed cheerfully from person to person for generations, because it feels as though it ought to be true. Something so vast, we assume, must surely be visible from the heavens. The reality is a gentle lesson in how a wonder's fame can outgrow the plain facts. The wall does not need to be seen from space to be astonishing. Its true marvel lies not in some impossible visibility from afar, but in the sheer human labor and patience it took to build across the ages. Some of the Great Wall's mortar was mixed with sticky rice. It sounds almost like a fairy tale, and yet it is quite true. During one of the great building periods, workers strengthened their mortar by stirring in a paste made from sticky rice, blending the humble grain with the usual mineral ingredients. The result was a mortar of remarkable strength and endurance, one that helped bind the wall's stones so firmly that some of those sections have resisted the weather and even the shaking of earthquakes for hundreds of years. Modern scientists who studied the old mortar found that a substance from the rice helped it set into a tighter, more durable bond, a small triumph of practical craft, discovered long before its chemistry was understood. There is something wonderful in that image, of a mighty imperial wall held together in part by a food from the dinner bowl. It reminds us that great works are often built from ordinary things used in clever ways. Behind the dramatic ridgeline views and the towering gates, there were cooks, laborers, and quiet experiments, patiently finding what would hold and folding the harvest of the fields into the bones of the wall. From its watchtowers, the Great Wall could pass a warning faster than any galloping horse. A watchtower was never merely a place to stand and gaze out at the horizon. It was one node in a much larger system, built to see far, respond quickly, and coordinate people who might never meet face to face. From the towers, guards could spot movement in the distance and raise a signal, using smoke by day and fire by night to send word racing along the line from tower to tower. In this way, a warning could travel enormous distances in a matter of hours, far outrunning any messenger on horseback. The towers also stored supplies, since a frontier post cannot depend on last-minute deliveries, and they controlled who passed through the gates and choke points below. That means the wall was never only a wall of defense. It was also a system of communication and control, managing trade, movement, and the flow of people at the very edge of the empire. Each tower was a small building with an enormous task, linking sight, signal, and authority into a single raised platform, so that the whole vast frontier could speak to itself across the mountains. Some of the wall's bricks are stamped with the names of the officials and workshops responsible for them. On certain sections, you can find marks pressed into the clay that feel startlingly modern, like a form of quality control signed directly into the brick. These stamps could record who oversaw the making of the brick or which workshop had supplied it, turning a length of ancient wall into a kind of paperwork you can reach out and touch. It suggests an empire of careful logistics, accountability, and quiet pride. For a stamped brick implies that someone cared enough to leave a trace of their responsibility. It also changes the human scale of the whole monument. A massive fortification can feel anonymous and cold, but a single stamped brick feels personal and near. It hints at supervisors checking each batch, workers shaping the clay, and officials tracking the endless output, a whole hidden world of ordinary labor behind the grandeur. In a way, the stamp is the fingerprint of the state itself, pressed into the wall. It reminds us that great empires run not only on soldiers and emperors, but on systems, records, and the countless careful hands that make them work. The temples of Petra were carved downward into the living cliff, not built up from the ground. Instead of stacking block upon block toward the sky, the builders of Petra did the opposite, cutting inward and downward into the rose-colored rock of a desert canyon, so that a grand facade emerged from the face of the mountain itself. That reversal feels almost magical when you first see it, for the building looks freestanding, and yet it is part of the very stone it stands against. The rock holds the memory of every chisel stroke, and the narrow canyon approach makes the reveal wonderfully dramatic. The great carved front hidden until the winding path suddenly opens before it. Carving into rock demands a different kind of planning than ordinary building, for you cannot adjust later by moving a wall, and a single mistake can scar the surface forever. The workers likely began at the top and worked their way down, so that falling debris would not damage the finished details below. The result is at once bold and delicate. Columns and doorways shaped from what once looked like solid wilderness, as though the mountain itself had quietly learned to speak in architecture. A hidden network of channels and dams let Petra tame the desert's flash floods. Petra sits in a land where water can arrive with sudden violence, roaring down narrow valleys with almost no warning, and such a flood could destroy an unprepared settlement in minutes. The answer of the people who built the city was not to endure the water but to guide it. They cut channels, raised barriers, and built control points that redirected the dangerous floodwater away from the places where people lived and gathered. At the same time, they captured and stored that same water for the long dry months, turning a deadly threat into a precious resource. This was engineering as pure survival, and it is part of why a great city could flourish where you might expect only empty stone. Imagine a sudden storm breaking far upstream, then a wall of water rushing down toward the city, only to be split, calmed, and gathered by a system built long before. The achievement was not merely technical, but almost psychological. For a city that can master the flood can feel secure enough to invest in beauty, trade, and ceremony. Petra's grandeur rested quietly on this unseen mastery of water. Petra grew rich as a crossroads of the ancient incense trade. Its location was its destiny, a meeting point for goods, languages, and ideas carried across some of the harshest country in the world. Caravans laden with precious incense, spices, and other treasures crossed vast distances between the lands of Arabia and the markets of the Mediterranean, and Petra offered them a place to rest, to trade, and to negotiate. Trade is never only the buying and selling of goods. It is also information traveling with the merchants, and it can turn a single city into a crossroads of many cultures at once. Petra's wealth shows plainly in its architecture, for carving those monumental facades required time, skill, and a deep confidence that the future would keep on paying. Its wealth shows too in its worldliness, for a great trading city learns diplomacy as a daily habit, bending and adapting as empires press in around it. Petra was never truly isolated, whatever its remote setting suggests. It was tied to a wide world by long routes that stitched the deserts to the distant ports. Its wonder is, in part, the story of how patient commerce can raise a shining city when nature itself seems to forbid one. Petra's water system made life in the desert feel almost effortless. The city's most impressive achievement may not be the carved stone that first catches the eye, but the quiet way it made water dependable in a place where water is usually anything but. A network of channels, clay pipes, and collection points gathered and stored the precious rainfall and controlled how it was shared throughout the city. This turns ordinary life upside down. Where water is scarce, everything is limited and uncertain. But where water is well managed, a city can support markets, gardens, animals, and the endless stream of travelers passing through. It also changes the very rhythm of life, since a reliable supply allows people to plan far beyond the worries of tomorrow. The system demanded constant care and firm rules, for stored water invites both cooperation and conflict. Yet when it worked, it created a beautiful illusion of ease. Visitors might see flowing fountains and simply assume abundance, never guessing at the careful planning behind every single drop. Petra reminds us that the most powerful wonders are sometimes the ones we barely notice, precisely because they make survival itself look effortless and calm. For centuries, Petra was lost to the wider world beyond its own desert. After its long ages of glory, the city slowly faded from the great trade routes as the world shifted around it, and in time it slipped almost entirely out of the awareness of distant lands. The local people of the region never forgot it, of course, for they lived among its carved cliffs and knew its winding canyons well. But to the far-off cities of Europe, Petra became little more than a rumor, a half-remembered name, hidden away behind its mountains and its narrow gorge. When a curious traveler at last made his way there in disguise and brought word of it back, the outside world was astonished, as though a whole city had materialized out of legend. That long concealment is part of Petra's romance. A great and beautiful place could remain, for so long, a secret kept by the desert itself. It reminds us that history is not only what happened, but also what becomes widely known, and that the two can drift far apart. Some wonders are lost not to earthquakes or fire, but simply to distance, silence, and the slow forgetting of the world. The Colosseum could fill and empty its 50,000 spectators in a matter of minutes. The true marvel of the great arena is not only its size, but how smoothly such an enormous crowd could move through it without ever collapsing into panic. The building was threaded with a system of numbered entrances, stairways, and corridors that worked like the vessels of a great body, distributing people quickly to their places and drawing them out again just as fast. Instead of one deadly crush at a single gate, the crowd flowed through many passages at once, each leading toward a particular section of seats. This is architecture designed for movement itself, not merely for viewing, and it reflects a genius for organization on a vast scale. A building this large becomes dangerous the moment it relies on improvisation, and the Romans left nothing to chance. For the spectator, the effect must have felt almost modern. You arrived, you found your assigned way in, and you flowed calmly into place among the thousands. That quiet efficiency is what made the whole spectacle possible, for the building could handle the tides of human beings as confidently as it handled its tons of stone. A vast awning could be unfurled across the Colosseum to shade the enormous crowd. Picture the sun beating down on packed stone seating for hour after hour. And then imagine great wings of fabric spreading out overhead like the sails of a mighty ship. This enormous canopy required careful planning and skilled crews to handle its ropes, poles, and shifting tension. It was no simple cloth thrown across the top, but a controlled covering that had to respond to the wind and the changing light without ever collapsing onto the people below. Sailors were likely brought in to work it, for rigging such a thing is a craft of the sea, demanding a knowledge of knots, leverage, and teamwork that ordinary laborers did not possess. When the shade at last spread across the arena, it changed the entire experience. People could linger longer, tempers could cool in the shadow, and the brutal spectacle below could feel a little more like luxury. And that mattered, for comfort is part of control. A shaded crowd is a calmer crowd, and so the great awning was engineering placed quietly in the service of power, turning a harsh arena into a carefully managed world. In its early years, the Colosseum's floor could reportedly be flooded to stage mock sea battles. Before the network of tunnels and chambers was built beneath the arena floor, ancient writers tell us that the great space could be filled with water to recreate famous naval battles for the roaring crowd. Imagine the astonishment of it. A stone arena in the heart of the city suddenly transformed into a shallow lake, with small ships and costumed fighters churning across the surface where gladiators had lately stood. Historians still debate exactly how this was managed and how the water was brought in and drained away, but the accounts insist that such spectacles truly happened in the arena's first seasons. Whether the ships were full-sized or cleverly scaled down, the ambition behind the idea is staggering. It reveals a hunger for spectacle so intense that the Romans were willing to reshape water itself for an afternoon's entertainment. Later, the space beneath the floor was filled with passages and lifts for animals and scenery, and the flooded battles came to an end. But for a brief while, the greatest arena in the world could become a sea, and the crowd could watch a war unfold where the sand had been. The Colosseum's numbered entrances worked much like the gates of a modern stadium. Each of the arena's many arched entrances was marked with a number, and spectators carried tokens that guided them to the correct gate, the right stairway, and their assigned seats within. It was a system of addresses pressed into stone, sorting a vast and restless crowd smoothly into place. Instead of chaos, there was order, with the poorest spectators climbing to the highest tiers and the most honored guests seated close to the action below. The whole of Roman society arranged in careful layers around the sand. This quiet machinery of movement allowed a great event to begin on time and to end without disaster, and it let officials control exactly who sat where. Standing among the ruins today, you can still see those carved numbers above the arches, a small and startling reminder of just how modern the ancient design truly was. We often imagine the Romans as distant and strange, and then we notice something as familiar as a numbered gate, and the centuries seem to fold gently together. The Colosseum was not only a place of spectacle, it was a masterpiece of moving human beings, as carefully engineered as any structure of our own age. The Great Pyramid of Chichen Itza is a calendar carved in stone. The stepped temple that rises at the heart of the ancient city was built with the movements of the sky woven into its very shape. Each of its four sides carries a long staircase, and when the steps are counted together with the platform at the summit, they add up to the number of days in a year, 365 in all. The building is covered with such numbers, its terraces and panels echoing the counts that the Maya used to track time, the seasons, and the turning of the heavens. For a people whose calendars guided farming, ceremony, and the authority of their leaders, this was far more than decoration. To predict the seasons was to hold a kind of power, and to build that knowledge into a temple was to make it permanent and sacred. Walking around the pyramid, you are walking through a year of days rendered in stone. It reminds us that for the Maya, time itself was holy, something to be counted, honored, and built into the enduring heart of a city, so that the sky and the calendar and the temple were all bound together as one. Clap your hands before the great staircase, and the pyramid seems to chirp back like a bird. It is one of the most enchanting experiences at Chichen Itza. Stand at the foot of the temple's steps, clap once, and a strange high sound returns to you. A sharp chirping echo that many people say resembles the call of the sacred Quetzal bird. Whether or not the builders intended this effect, it is spellbinding, for it reveals how architecture can shape sound like an invisible sculptor. The hard stone surfaces, the stepped geometry, and the open air all work together to bounce the noise back in a surprising way, and the human mind delights in turning that echo into meaning. That is why the experience lingers in memory. You make a single simple sound, and the ancient building answers with something that feels alive, a brief conversation between a visitor and a monument across the centuries. It also raises a deeper and gentler curiosity. How did the ancient people experience sound during their ceremonies and gatherings in these great plazas? Even without any modern theory, the builders surely learned what carried, what softened, and what could astonish a waiting crowd. and some of that knowledge still echoes today. Twice each year, a serpent of shadow slides slowly down the pyramid's steps. On the days when day and night fall into perfect balance, the setting sun strikes the great temple at just the right angle, and the corner of its stepped terraces casts a rippling line of shadow along the side of the northern staircase. As the afternoon light shifts, that shadow appears to move, undulating like a great snake descending the pyramid, until it joins the carved stone serpent's head that waits at the base of the stairs. In this way, the whole building comes alive for a brief hour, a feathered serpent of light and shadow making its slow way down to the earth. It is almost certainly no accident, but a marvel of deliberate design, aligning a massive structure with the turning of the year so precisely that the sun itself becomes part of the ceremony. Crowds still gather twice a year to watch it happen, just as people surely gathered long ago. It is a breathtaking reminder that the builders were not only architects, but astronomers, patient watchers of the sky who could catch the sun in stone and make a god of shadow move down a staircase at the appointed hour. At Machu Picchu, the stones are fitted so tightly that a blade cannot slip between them. The first time you see those walls, the mind searches instinctively for mortar, and then slowly realizes there is none at all. The great blocks meet one another with such care that the seams seem to vanish, and the walls look almost as though they were poured rather than assembled from separate stones. This precision was never only for beauty. It helps the city endure in a place where the earth trembles and heavy rains fall. For when stones interlock so perfectly, a wall can shift slightly during a tremor and then settle back without shattering. The work demanded a deep knowledge of rock, since each block had to be shaped to fit its neighbors on every side. A vast three-dimensional puzzle worked out entirely by hand. That effort speaks of patient labor and a culture that valued craftsmanship built to outlast the ages. The result feels strangely intimate despite its grandeur, for it invites you to lean in close, to trace a single flawless seam with your finger, and to feel the presence of hands that simply refuse to accept anything less than perfect. Machu Picchu's terraces were engineered to farm the steep face of a mountain. Terraces are a quiet kind of brilliance. On a sharp slope, rain strips away the soil, and farming becomes a losing battle. But by shaping the hillside into broad stepped platforms, the builders slowed the water, held the earth in place, and created stable ground where crops could grow. Those stone retaining walls did more than hold back the soil. They absorbed the warmth of the sun by day and released it slowly as the mountain air cooled, softening the swings of temperature that can kill delicate plants. Different levels caught different amounts of light and wind, so that a single mountainside could hold many small climates, each suited to different crops. This is agriculture practiced as landscape engineering, and it reveals a people who understood not only how to raise temples and homes, but how to feed a community clinging to a challenging height. The terraces also changed how people moved, turning a harsh climb into a series of walkable stages carved into the slope. In this way, farming shaped daily life and the city's beauty at once, and the green steps became as much a part of the architecture as the temples themselves. The wider world knew nothing of Machu Picchu until the 20th century. For hundreds of years, the mountaintop city remained almost entirely absent from the awareness of distant lands, which is astonishing when you consider how dramatic and beautiful it is. Its remote setting high among the peaks helped keep it hidden, and later upheavals turned the world's attention elsewhere. The local people of the region never truly lost their knowledge of it, but international awareness lagged far behind, and that gap created a rare moment in modern history. A major site of a great civilization could still feel like a fresh revelation, rather than a familiar postcard image. When explorers and scholars at last brought word of it to the wider world, imagination rushed in swiftly, and the ruins became a new symbol of the Inca almost overnight. That sudden fame reshaped how people understood the whole ancient past. For a new discovery can quietly rewrite what feels central and important. It also raised hard questions about who a place belongs to, and what should happen when a quiet mountaintop becomes a destination for the whole world. Machu Picchu reminds us that history is not only what happened, but also what we finally come to know. The Taj Mahal was built as a tomb for a beloved wife. At its heart, this most graceful of monuments is grief turned into architecture, commissioned by an emperor who wished his sorrow and his love to become permanent. When his wife died, he set out to raise a memorial so beautiful that it would speak of her for as long as the world lasted. The result is not a simple tomb, but a carefully planned world of its own, where perfect symmetry and gentle proportion create a deep sense of calm, as though powerful emotion had been shaped into balance and stillness. Long gardens and still pools guide each visitor slowly toward the central dome, turning the very approach into a quiet ceremony. Yet the Taj Mahal is more than a private sorrow made visible. For a ruler who could command such craftsmanship and such vast resources was also displaying his power even as he mourned. That blend is part of its spell. It is intimate in its purpose and yet imperial in its scale. Standing before it, you feel how a single person's private grief could reshape a nation's image for centuries, and how a monument to loss could become an emblem of pure serenity. The marble of the Taj Mahal changes its color with the shifting light of the day. White marble is not truly white the way a page is white. It is a surface that drinks in the color of the sky and gives it back again in a softer voice. In the cool light of early morning, the great dome can appear pale and faintly blue, tinted by the dawn air. Under the hard light of midday, it brightens to a dazzling glare, its details sharpened against the shadows. As the sun sinks, the marble warms toward gentle tones of gold and rose, as if the building were holding the last heat of the day, and by moonlight it changes yet again, turning almost silver, its edges grown quiet and soft. Even the weather joins in, a hazy day blurring its outline into a dream, a passing rain deepening every shadow until the stone looks freshly polished. This slow, endless shifting is part of the monument's emotional power, for it means the building never looks quite the same from one hour to the next. To watch it through a single day is to see it breathe, quietly answering the changing light with 1,000 shades of white. The walls of the Taj Mahal are inlaid with flowers made of semi-precious stone. Rather than relying on paint that would fade with the years, the craftsmen set color directly into the marble itself, piece by patient piece. Tiny shapes were carved into the white stone, and then filled with fragments of jasper, carnelian, lapis, and other precious materials, forming delicate flowers, curling leaves, and flowing vines across the surface. The work demanded an almost unimaginable steadiness of hand, for a single slip could ruin hours of careful labor. From a distance, the decoration reads only as a soft, gentle patterning across the walls, but up close it becomes a miracle of precision, its edges meeting cleanly, and its curves staying graceful even at the smallest scale. This ancient technique turns the cold marble into a quiet garden that never wilts and never fades with the seasons. It also makes light itself a partner in the beauty, for the polished inlay catches the sun differently than the marble around it. As you move past the walls, the patterns seem to shimmer and shift, so that the building rewards close attention with a kind of movement without motion, blooming silently in stone. The calligraphy on the Taj Mahal grows larger as it rises, so that it looks perfectly even. At ground level, the human eye judges size in a very ordinary way. What is near looks large, and what is far looks small. The designers of the Taj Mahal understood this simple truth, and quietly turned it into art. The bands of graceful script that frame the great archway were made taller and wider as they climbed higher up the building, so that to a visitor gazing up from below, every line appears the same size, calm and consistent from bottom to top. This is no accident, but a carefully planned illusion, crafted for a person standing in the courtyard, with their head tilted back and their breath caught at the sight. The effect creates a deep sense of peace, for the mind loves an order it can trust without quite knowing why. Had the higher lines been left their true smaller size, the great height of the building would press upon the eye more harshly. By gently correcting the way we see, the monument seems to meet us halfway and to feel balanced and serene. It is a reminder that the greatest architecture is not only stone and symmetry, but also a quiet understanding of the human eye. Christ the Redeemer is struck by lightning several times every year. The great statue stands on a high peak above the city, arms open wide, and its very position is part of its meaning, for it was made to be seen from far across the streets and beaches below. But that same commanding height leaves it exposed to the wild weather that sweeps in over the mountains. Storms gather quickly there, and lightning naturally seeks the highest point, so the statue is struck again and again through the stormy seasons. Over the years, the lightning has damaged parts of it, chipping fingers and marking the head, and each time repairs are quietly made to restore the surface. There is something strangely moving in that vulnerability, for it makes the enormous monument feel almost human. It is not a symbol floating serenely above the world, untouched by nature. It stands within nature, taking real risk in real storms and enduring them season after season. Each repair is a small act of caretaking, and each strike is a reminder that even the most beloved icons stand beneath the very same sky and the very same weather as everyone gazing up at them from below. Hidden inside the base of the great statue is a small chapel. Most people see Christ the Redeemer only from far below, where it reads as a single solid figure against the open sky. And so it comes as a surprise to learn that there is any interior at all. Yet tucked within the base of the monument is a modest chapel, a quiet enclosed space that turns the statue from something you merely gaze up at into a place you can actually enter. That changes the experience in a subtle and lovely way. From outside, the sheer scale of the figure can feel distant and untouchable, almost overwhelming. But within, the feeling grows closer and more personal, a sheltered pause from the wind and the brightness of the high summit. The existence of the chapel also speaks quietly of intention. The statue was never meant only for photographs and postcards. It was meant to hold devotion, even if only in a small and simple room hidden at its heart. There is a special stillness to be found in hidden spaces, especially when they lie tucked inside something the whole world recognizes. The chapel reminds us that even the grandest monuments can carry a quiet interior life. Postcards and films turn the silhouette of Christ the Redeemer into a symbol of a whole city. Fame is not earned by height and setting alone. It is carried by repetition, by the endless copying of an image until it becomes instantly known. When postcards of the statue began to travel the world, they offered a shape anyone could recognize at a glance, arms outstretched above a dramatic sweep of mountains and sea. That image traveled far faster than most people ever could, until it became a kind of shorthand for the city itself. The films deepened the effect, for a single sweeping shot of the statue could tell an audience exactly where a story was set, even if no one spoke the city's name aloud. Over time, the great figure became a sort of visual passport stamp, known across languages and borders. This changes the way visitors arrive, for many feel they have already seen the monument long before they stand beneath it. And yet that familiarity can make the real encounter even more powerful, for at last the body catches up with the image. The wind is suddenly real, the climb is real, and the city spread far below is no longer a picture on a screen. The plateau at Giza holds not one pyramid, but a whole royal landscape. When people say they are going to see the Great Pyramid, they often picture a single building standing alone in the sand and nothing else. In truth, the plateau is an entire planned landscape, laid out with the seriousness of a capital city. Several pyramids rise from the site, each part of a larger story of rulers, families, and the changing styles of many generations. Temples and long causeways once shaped the ceremonies there, guiding how people moved and what they saw. Nearby lie the tombs of officials and relatives, revealing how power gathered in death as it had in life. Even the empty spaces between the monuments were arranged with intention, their lines of sight and sacred pathways meant to support ritual and hierarchy. And of course, the great stone sphinx keeps its patient watch over it all. Seeing the plateau as a whole complex changes the very scale of the wonder. It is not a single extraordinary building, but a long tradition of building, planning, and belief layered into one landscape, where the desert itself was slowly shaped into a vast map of royal ambition reaching toward eternity. The ruined forum at the heart of Rome was once as busy as any downtown today. It is easy to imagine ancient ruins as silent and solemn, but the Forum was once loud with bargaining, gossip, and urgent business. People crowded there to hear speeches, argue lawsuits, strike deals, and seek favors from the powerful. Temples stood beside government halls, so that sacred life brushed against politics in the same short walk. The statues and arches we now admire as art were once simply the scenery of the street, loaded with messages about power and identity for everyone hurrying past. Vendors and citizens of every rank moved through spaces that today stand empty and broken, and the ground would have rung with footsteps from dawn until dusk. That bustle matters because it shows us what Rome truly was. It was not only a city of monuments, but an empire run through conversation, paperwork, and daily performance in full public view. The Forum was a stage where a reputation could rise or collapse in a single afternoon. If you picture it as a living downtown district rather than a field of ruins, the broken columns suddenly make sense. They were the infrastructure of ordinary daily life. The wonders live on today in replicas, from grand casinos to humble classrooms. A wonder does not end at its original site. Once its image becomes famous, people begin rebuilding it everywhere, in miniature, in playful imitation, and in earnest homage. Copies of the pyramids, the Great Tower, and the ancient temples rise in theme parks and along city streets, and even in the models children build from cardboard and paint for school. A child shaping a little pyramid on a kitchen table is joined, across all their differences, to the architect designing a hotel in the shape of a monument. These recreations quietly reveal what each age values. For some chase spectacle and tourism, some aim to teach, and some are sincere while others are simply for fun. Even an imperfect copy can spark real curiosity and send someone searching for the true history behind it. That is part of the modern power of the wonders. They act like cultural seeds, so that a single famous silhouette can grow into countless versions, each carrying the old idea into a new place. In this strange way, the wonders stay alive even when the originals are ruined, distant, or fenced carefully away from the crowds. In the end, every list of wonders is a mirror of what an age most fears to lose. A list is never truly neutral. It is a reflection held up to the people who made it. The ancient lists favored the reach of their own known world and celebrated monuments tied to prestige, religion, and power. Later lists came to emphasize inclusion, shared pride, and the whole wide globe, even at the cost of endless argument over popularity and politics. In every age, a wonder is never merely a building. It is a choice about what deserves to be remembered, and that choice quietly reveals a people's deepest fears. We fear forgetting what we have achieved. We fear losing who we are. We fear that time will slowly erase all meaning, and so we point to a handful of places and say, "Remember these." Yet the same act carries hope as well, for to choose our wonders is to believe that human beings can still make things worth passing on. When you look at any list of wonders, you are really seeing two histories at once: the past that built the monuments, and the present that decided they still matter. As we come to the end of our journey, we can wander back slowly through the long hallway of human ambition, pausing once more at the doorways that still leave people breathless. We traced the old 7 wonders, born from travelers' lists and carried forward by rumor and ruin and awe. We stood in the shadow of the Great Pyramid, the lone survivor, still holding the desert in its quiet grip. We imagined green gardens rising where every drop of water was precious, a dream balanced on hidden engineering and stubborn devotion. We stepped into temples built to overwhelm, and before a god of gold and ivory who seemed to fill the very air. We watched a tower on a small island turn fire into guidance, and felt how even the greatest landmarks can be shaken loose by the patient earth. Then we moved on to newer wonders, chosen by millions of voices from across the whole world. Walls that stretch like a system of memory over the mountains, a rose-colored city that learnt to tame the sudden desert floods, an arena that could hold a roaring crowd and then release it like a slow breath. Mountain stones fitted so closely they seem to refuse the passing of time, marble that quietly changes its mood with the sky. Each place, ancient or modern, asked the same gentle question: What do human beings build when they long to be remembered? If you enjoyed this slow journey, you can support the channel by liking, subscribing, or leaving a soft word below. It helps these bedtime journeys find the people who need a calm place to land. And if you are still awake, there will be another quiet path through history waiting for you on the screen whenever you wish to follow it. But for now, there is nothing left to do and nowhere left to be. Let your jaw unclench. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Let the stories settle over you like sand drifting slowly after a warm breeze, until the whole world feels a little softer and further away. Breathe in and breathe out, and let the darkness do what it does best. Sleep well, and good night.